Hello, my name's Alister and this is my Ferret Scout car. It's a Mark II 4. I acquired it back in 2003, many years ago, so it's been a family member for many years. I got it as an absolute wreck, and the reason I got it, I lost my first wife to dreaded cancer, and then I found myself with a 7-year-old son scratching my head after he had gone to bed thinking, what am I going to do now? So I thought I need a project. So I managed to find this Ferret Scout car, a bit of a cliche, but in a barn in Kent, down near RF Manson. So I went down there, the vehicle couldn't move, managed to get the engine going. It was in incredibly poor state. It was also wedged in with other machinery, so I didn't really get a good look at it. My 7-year-old son was there, and he was sort of leaping around it saying, go on, Dad, buy it. So I actually left saying, no, I'm not going to buy it because it's in such a poor state. Came back to Lincolnshire, and then the chap phoned me up and said, look, do you want this Ferret? And I went, oh, go on then. So I loaded it back up to Lincolnshire, and I've literally spent a good 20 years fixing it up, getting it back into some sort of reasonable condition. So it's been a labour of love, to be honest. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of point out some of the features of the vehicle. And one of the things about the vehicle as well is that part of the interest in it is not just finding out about actually working on it and fixing it. It's also about finding out the history behind the vehicle. So I'd written to Bovington Tank Museum. I was lucky to get hold of the card that holds all the history of the machine. And lo and behold, it was destined to be a hard target down at the ranges down in the south. Fortunately, Bovington Tank Museum pulled the vehicle off the range, and they used it as bargaining material for a white Scout car. This vehicle wasn't used; it was basically stuffed away and left for many years to rot. So this vehicle, during looking at the history of it, spent the majority of its time in Northern Ireland. So in Northern Ireland, they were used in Belfast, and the history card does give a lot of history behind the vehicle being in several different sites and working out of RAF Aldergrove. The vehicle's been up-armoured, so that's why it's a Mark II 4. Sadly, there were many of these vehicles that were taken out through landmines, and the MOD realised that they had to up-armour the version. So what they did, they've welded on sort of extra applique armour that I'll show you as I walk around the vehicle. So there are some sort of slight modifications with armour and firefighting equipment and suspension modification and so forth, which I'll point out. So the vehicle itself, I've kitted it out I served in the Royal Artillery in 5.5 the Residency Field Battery in Lippstadt in Germany, and I served as what's known as an OPAC signaller and driver. So I worked on these vehicles directing artillery fire. So I've recreated this version to something to reminisce about the sort of the vehicle makeup that I would sort of remember. So we've got the pennants here of 5.5 battery, which are the double ducks, LV. With battle honours of Lucknow, so I've recreated the pennants, and then some of the features of it. So we've got all the sort of equipment at the front. So we've got the shovel, the pick, we've got the tube at the front here, which is to hold spare aerials. Obviously, we've got the smoke dischargers as well. The smoke dischargers, funnily enough, we never used those from recollection. They were just sort of a feature on there. Incidentally, these often would go missing. The caps, the rubber caps. So we used to use compo tin lids. So you used to get a plastic in your compo rations. You got a little lid, so that would fit perfectly over the top, so you could keep the rubbish out of the being consumed in the smoke discharger. So we've got the bridge classification on here as well. Quite often you'll see vehicles with a yellow bridge classification. And sort of through the late 80s, obviously you didn't want too much leery paintwork on your vehicle, especially if you're working covertly. So some of the features here, we've got just a green and black bridge classification. So further around the vehicle, we've got the recovery chain. There's various bits of configuration for these. So some people had them sort of twisted around the front of the vehicle. I've recreated the version that we had, which is basically wrapped around the front of the vehicle, only used for recovery, for recovery purposes. We've got just looking at the turret, we've got the registration plate. So this one's 00DC05, which is originally produced as a Mark II version, and then, as I said, has been up-armoured to the Mark II 4. Driving in these vehicles, we've got at the front, we've got the hatch at the front, and to be honest, to drive with the periscopes is extremely difficult, very, very, very challenging. So just certainly in Germany, we used to drive around with just the front open. There were windscreens available that you'll see. Enthusiasts have windscreens for the vehicles, but generally they were very, very rarely used. They're in the barracks. They're in the sort of the garages for these, but we very rarely used. We've got the side hatches as well, which drop down, so the driver can sort of drop these down. So if I just click on this will fall down in place, and then you've got the vision through the periscope. And there is those people, Ferret crews, and I know a couple of people themselves that have got broken fingers. So if I just lock that off, what tended to happen, if they weren't locked off properly, the hatch would come down and then it would land on your fingers, and you'd have a good scream. So everybody, as a driver or as working on ferret crews, are taught, make sure that they lock off the hatches sufficiently. So just moving round, so we've got the antenna pot. So we've got 2 radios in the vehicle. So the 2 radios, because it's an artillery observation vehicle, we've got a 351 radio, which talks to the, so the 351 will be talking to the, basically the ferret crew would work as a split party. So you would be, the main party would be working with the, centrally of the battle group, with the company commander or with a squadron commander, directing artillery support. And then you'd have the ferret that would be on the flank, that would help support any observation. So this vehicle, so one of the radios is talking to the battery, which is the 353, and then the 351 is talking to the back to the your own crews, back to your FOO, your forward observation officer. So as I move around the vehicle, you've got the hatch at the top, which will swing over and close. It goes into several different positions as well. So if you want a bit of a windbreaker, you can elevate the hatch so it's in almost vertical position, which just helps the commander get less battered with rain and so forth. We've got a big side bin on the side, so you've got lots of stowage. So these aren't armoured, but you're keeping all sorts of bits of kit in here, things like your bottle jacks, your starting handle, and all your bits of compo and other bits of equipment that you need, toolkit and so forth. We've got some visor on the side here, so inside you've got a splinter screen just behind this, so you can look out through the side of the vehicle. Extremely difficult to look out of, and squaddies being squaddies, on the gun part would often get a sort of a 4-inch brush and paint. So this has all been sprayed, but in reality, the majority of vehicles would have been painted on the gun part with your green and black using a 4-inch brush and a tin of paint. So of course these areas here got clogged up with paint and would cause visibility problems. At the back here we've got a first aid kit. Just pull those out. We've got a sort of first aid box here that we can, if need be, you've got your plasters and bandages and so forth in that particular area. Then we've got more stowage, and then wheels wise, so when we look at the wheels, they're 900 by 16 wheels. They're called run flat. So in theory, if you had a puncture in one of these things, you'd still be able to get yourself out of trouble. The series of nuts on here, so you've got the outer nuts, which holds the 2 sections of the wheel together, marked up red, because the last thing you want to do is to split those and the wheel to go bang and split apart under pressure, which can be very dangerous. And then you've got your road wheel nuts as well. These are actually painted green. Now, quite a few ferrets I've seen in private hands where they've been painted white, which look nice and shiny and good, but personally I've never seen them in service painted white. The hubs themselves, I mean, there's a bit of an analogy that if you have a Ferret, it's got no oil in it if you haven't got puddles of oil in your garage. So in other words, if there's no oil dripping out, there's no oil in the Ferret, because they were notorious for leakage. So when the Ferret's going along as well, that you've got various different seals in the hub. When they get hot, they were prone to flying out some of the oil. So we've got a situation where oil will be extracted from the hub, and you'll get lines of oil flicking around on the outside. So there'll be and of course when you go through dusty, dirty conditions, you'd have lines of sort of sandy dirt coming across the wheels. Moving around to the back, we've got the obviously the protector for the exhaust, which gets, and even now we've driven down here this morning, it's still extremely hot. And then if I just flick up the engine cover, and if we just look on the inside, so we've got a Rolls-Royce B60 engine, 4.2 litre, extremely reliable engine, and this is it's part of the B series. So this engine also shared different cylinder versions for different vehicle types. So, for example, the Alvis Saracen also had this engine type. Well, it had the 8-cylinder version. We've got the Austin Champ that's got the 4-cylinder version. So that there were sort of 8 or 9 different vehicles, including some of your recovery vehicles using donkey engines that were also Rolls-Royce B40, B60 engines. So we've got the engine, we've got the yellow cap for oil filling. These do, to start with, tend to get smoky inside here, so quite a bit of soot can build up around this area, because when the engine's cold, to generate some flexibility in the engine, they've created, with the manifold going to the exhaust pipe, there's 2 floating pipes. So until they get hot, you get quite a bit of soot coming out of those areas that then gets sucked through the fan unit. So you'll see the fan unit, it's fairly clean, but these can often get clogged up with sort of soot and dirt that get thrown out through the back and the radiator. So we've got the engine itself. So the vehicle is designed to wade through water. So often, in Germany, if you're on a major exercise and you sort of went across a Royal Engineer bridge, quite often entry and exit points of that bridge would be quite deep in water. So the engine is actually designed to prevent any contamination of water and not swim, but it certainly can wade through fairly deep water. You'll see as well inside the engine compartment just here that you've got a fire extinguisher system. So this is a Mark II 4 which had a fire extinguisher system fitted to it, and the idea being that if you're in a riot and you had a petrol bomb thrown at you and it was affecting the crew, then someone internally, it can be activated. You can activate it internally, but there are 2 external activation points. So if you've got troops around you, they can sort of they can activate a big cylinder of carbon dioxide, CO2. So you'll see here one of the activation points, one of the handles just here, and then you've got the instruction just on the plate to tell the person how to actually activate the extinguisher. We've actually got a bit of an oiler here as well, but to be honest, I've never known anybody use it, but it's quite a nice feature of the Ferret for sort of aesthetics. So if I'm just going to close this down, we'll move around the back, and then I'll show you the other side of the engine. So around the back, we've got obviously registration plate again, build up of dirt and so forth wise. So you'll tend to get quite a bit of build up around the back, and then on the down here through the hubs and the wheel stations, you'll get quite a bit of mud build up in the sort of the rear area. So coming around the back, we've got this is just the brass nut that you can remove to use as a starting handle, and then we've got this little lug here. It's got a convoy light, and then we've got the pattern here of the black and white pattern, which I've recreated from photographs of ones that I've sort of worked upon. The idea being is when you're in a convoy, you've got an opportunity to flick to convoy light, and then a very small light just covers this area, and you've got this little pinpoint that you can follow in a convoy when you're on exercise or whatever you're up to. It can be very difficult to follow on convoy light, and I experienced with a chap called Benny Juice. I was driving along, and we actually went off the side of a bridge because I was trying to follow somebody, and I think the convoy area was completely obscured. It's extremely difficult to drive with it, without any sort of lights. So that's that. Just moving round, we've got some stowage areas here. So the bins usually would have stowage straps on, but I've taken these ones off because they tend to get a bit tatty and worn. Things that would be kept on the back, in Germany we'd have things like a canvas cover, so there was an opportunity, or any of your sort of Bergens and things that you could strap to the back. You had to keep these fairly clear though, because the cooling system for the engine, you're completely reliant on air coming through the vehicle, back through the back hatches, and actually going in and getting sucked through underneath these engine covers. My understanding as well is there is we have had problems with these bogging in, in sort of soft sandy conditions. So this version won't do it, but I understand that there was an opportunity years ago that you could take this rod out and then you could use one of the engine covers basically as a sand channel to try and get yourself bogged out of a sticky situation. So moving round, we've got the another fire extinguisher, extremely good fire extinguisher there. I forget the terminology now of what they're called, but they are really, really, really good. I don't think they're particularly environmentally friendly, so I don't think you can get those. BCF, I think they're called, funnily enough. But they're really, really good quality fire extinguisher. So we've got some water carriage, drinking water carriage. We've got fuel. To be honest, we've got one fuel jerry can on here, and quite often you take 2 or 3 jerry cans because the vehicle, this one, the Mark II/4, I'll probably get about 6.5 to the gallon out of it. So it's quite thirsty. So if you're out and about, it's important that you're carrying additional jerry cans of fuel. So sometimes there'll be 3 on there. We've got the Browning mount. So the Browning mount. So what you can do is as a Ferret Scout car crew, because you're there as an observation team, often the vehicle would be parked up on exercise, and then you would move forward, and then you would dig a trench, and then you'd operate from a trench. So there would be opportunity to set up things like the Browning within the trench as a bit of fire support. Personally, we never used Brownings. This one's kitted out with it. So later on in the late 80s, we used Jimpy. So you'd have Jimpy in them. Quite often you go on exercise and you wouldn't have a weapon at all. So you just have your small arm, which would should be an SMG, submachine gun, the 9mm. Quite often, though, the Armoured would give you an SLR, so you're in the tight space as it is, and then you'd have to clamber around with an SLR rattling in the back of the vehicle. So we've got this that can be run out remotely. One of the radios that's inside, which is just here, the 351, that's man portable. So you would, in addition to the way it's set up now, you'd have a portable cradle that you could throw on your back, and then that would then be taken to the trench, and then the communication back to the vehicle, because you may want to connect it to the other radios as well. That would be run through this wire, which we call Don 10 wire. So that's in there. We've got the other antenna for the second radio on here, and then we've got. So an interesting part of this as well is that we've got this spare wheel in situ, and when we look on the inside of the vehicle, there are actually 2 red handles that you can retract, and they, because of the weight behind the hatch and the wheel, effectively, if you were to roll over and you want to escape from the vehicle, there is an opportunity to crawl through a little hatch. You have to be fairly slender to get through that hatch, to be honest, but. Usually with Ferret crews, there'd be sort of 6'4", 6 foot people that would be thrown in the driver's seat. So you'd have to be a bit of a contortionist to get out. So as we move around, we've got these various different hooks that are on here. Often you'll often see bits of Don 10. So the Don 10 reel we've just seen would be mounted on the side, and quite sometimes like a rigid hard Don 10 reel. And then we've also got things like your equipment. So your Bergen, your backpack, maybe sort of you'd use carabiners. The carabiner would be hooked onto the Bergen, and then you just hook the carabiner onto the turret. So there are various different fixing points. These lugs here that you'll see, these stem from, this is originally would have been a Mark II, 3 version, and then when they manufactured the Mark 1 version, obviously they put the turret on the top. So these still replicate from when the Mark 1 version had a tarpaulin that could be just run over the top of the vehicle. Okay, so let's have a look at inside the turret. So we've got the pads either side, which would just protect the commander, and the driver is in an extremely comfortable position. But certainly in a Mark II 3 and a Mark II 4, if you're doing cross country, you tend to get thrown about a bit. So if you go over lumps and bumps, then there are lots of sort of sharp points and things that you would get obtain bruises from. So inside we've got the pads, we've got the backrest here. So quite often you'll see people driving along and sitting on the back of the tailgate here. It was completely banned. You'd get a real ticking off if you were sat on the back here. It was important to keep your shoulders below the level of the top of the turret. So that was really important because there was always a risk of these being top heavy, turning over and squashing the commander. So it was important to be within the turret. So we've got the gunner's periscope as well. So it's a case of just resting your head on this pad, and then you can see through. And on the periscope itself, there's a little round ring which you could zero that's cast onto the target. So the machine gun that's in here, so this is a 30 caliber machine gun, but this version though has actually been converted into 7.62, so it's been modified slightly, but extremely good gun. It's a 1919, so I think they've been out a fair old amount of time. Firing these, so we fired these in the Gulf. I'd never had the experience of firing these in Germany, but certainly in the Gulf, they were fired, and they would have a catch bag to try and catch the shell cases. But to be honest, a lot of that brass would be ejected everywhere else within the Ferret. And when I fixed this one up and I took various components out and cleared it all out, there was still some brass left within the vehicle that had been left over. I think it was one of its last units was 4RTR, and I also found a 4RTR badge inside the hull. So there are a few goodies that I managed to recover from the vehicle. So you've got your ammunition box here, and just behind it there's another little area which you probably can't see, but there's where you keep your oil, and also a couple of the tools as well that you would, so if you like an extraction tool, so if you've got a brass cart caught in the Browning, there is an extraction tool that you can pull the brass out from. So turret movement wise, driving, you would always drive generally with the turret locked off. So we have a locking lever here, so I'm just going to pull this out here, give it a twist, and then it's quite hefty, but it's on three sets of bearings. So you lift the handle, and then you can then rotate the turret. So it's fairly easy to sort of move around, but cross country a little bit more difficult. And then if I move it round, it'll just lock itself off. There we go. Put it back into that position. There we go, it's all locked off. And of course, something that you'd never be without are your goggles, so that to keep all the mess out your face when you're driving along. And of course, some of the other things that you'd find in the turret, see the map. This one's of Lark Hill, so you can see the demolition danger area. And then of course, something you wouldn't be without as an OP crew is your binos. So just looking at the inside of the vehicle, I've recreated this vehicle to memory from being an OPAC as a signer. So we've got the right-hand radio, which is the 351, PRC 351, and then we've got the left-hand radio, which is the 353, so enabling communication. Directly above that, we've got the commander's SMG, 9mm SMG, which is folded in the closed position, just resting on the back. Just moving round, just in the top left-hand corner, we have a grenade box. So you'd be able to put sort of smoke grenades and so forth in there. Directly below that, we have this big silver box in the corner. This is the air cleaner, and directly underneath the air cleaner, we have one of the 2 battery boxes. So an absolute pain to get to. So notoriously, ferrets would drain their charge. So often you'd have a slave lead that was with the 432, and you'd be able to slave start the ferret using on the other side, which we'll have a look at shortly. There's a slave lead point in which we can use to start the engine. Incidentally, the reason why a lot of that battery exhaustion happened is because the batteries, I believe, are underrated. So what I've done, I've put 100 amp batteries in this one, and also insulated it. So I put rubber mats all the way around the batteries to protect it from being bounced about and shorting out. So from the air cleaner, just to the left hand side, we've got a lamp. So the lamp can be plugged into an auxiliary point where we can get a bit of light into the crew compartment. Just above there, just for some aesthetics, we've got a couple of smoke grenades just hanging there, and then we've got the splinter screen, which we spoke about earlier, which you need bionic eyes to be able to see out of that thing. Not particularly easy at all. We've also got the release handle for the escape hatch. So escape hatches being on either side of the vehicle. The radio that's in there is a PRC 344, which is a ground-to-air radio. So if some OPACs, observation crews, would go on a course, and it was called a laser target marker course, and they would use the 344 to be able to get a good understanding about how to bring. So you'd be in communication with aircraft and be able to bring. Aircraft in onto targets using laser-guided bombs. So you'd use that in conjunction with another piece of kit. We've got just inside the box, we've got you'll see the green square pad with all the white sheet with all the numbers on, or the letters. So this is what we call BATCO. So BATCO was a method in which every 24 hours you get a sheet of paper that would change the frequencies to enable you to change the frequencies of the any communication that you were sending. So you had to change the sheet every 24 hours. And then in terms of sending coordinates back to the gun position, you would be able to give that grid reference coded using the BATCO sheet. Just moving up beyond that from this box here, and generally the box is going to be used for other things as well, like ammunition storage, which we'll see on the other side. Then we have the crew compartment light. Notoriously, you leave the light on and you lose all the battery. The battery just disappears in rapidly. So generally, you try and avoid using those crew compartment lights. And then the Mark II 4 has got the cylinder, the carbon dioxide cylinder. So it's a hefty cylinder of carbon dioxide, which would extinguish hopefully any flames coming in from a would-be petrol bomb. Then we've got the berry. Then we've got the flask. So this is a very old thermos flask. It's fitted, but I don't recollect ever using a thermos flask in this particular design in the late 80s. But it's designed to be in that particular location. Then we have the spare splinter screen, just in case the ones that are fitted get damaged in any sort of action. And directly below that, then we have the SMG magazines. The SMG magazines would usually be turned around the other way, but for aesthetics, when I'm to show, it looks better if you can see some nice shiny 9mm bullets in there. So usually they would be turned upside down, your Sterling magazines. We've also got, as part of the OP crew, we've got the shooting compass and map, and a protractor in there, which was just general kit for determining where your targets were from the Ferret, and then being able to use the BATCO to send your fire mission back to the gun position. And then just on here we've got the TUAM, which is from recollection, tuning unit automatic antenna matching from recollection. So this unit here was just used to help tune the aerial for the radio setup, the harness setup. So we have the driver's position, which is incredibly comfortable, and you're effectively sat in between the two prop shafts. The prop shafts are connected to a bevel box, and then the prop shaft will be connected to a transfer box, and then we have down here a lever. So effectively, what we can do is you can use the change lever to go either into forward or reverse. So effectively, when you select the gears, you can either go as fast forward as backwards. 5 gears in all as well within this vehicle. Box-wise, so we've got this box here. So to be honest, this box here as a driver, I remember we just used to keep there were a couple of padlocks in there for the hatch padlocks, but also your boiled sweets from compo rations would be kept in here, or if you were lucky enough, a bar of chocolate that you could secretly stash in there. Then we've got this box here, which is I never saw one fitted. I saw the box fitted, but never saw one inside, but it was the spare commander's periscope box. So that would sit in here. Then we've got a few bits of crew kit, so the torches, some of the sort of switch boxes for the radio harness. Then moving round, we've got the compass. Actually, the compass will be in mils as well, so we didn't use degrees, we used mils, 600 mils to the 360. That's the way that the military worked out using compasses. Then we've also got the driver's goggles, and then you've got some of the harness kit. And then we move on to I've actually fitted some 30 caliber boxes in here, some ammunition boxes. But by rights, so that the 30 caliber Browning boxes go with the Browning that's fitted. So in later models, this would be converted to 7.62, which would be for your static, turret mounted Jimpy, general purpose machine gun. Then we've got the sort of crew berry, obviously artillery. Then we've got the RAC helmet, so crew helmet. So before we were issued with there were 2 styles of helmets. So you had the crew helmets, which are the RAC version, and then we've also got we had the domes, the metal domes that we had, but they were replaced with a sort of a very, very rigid plastic version later on, like a resin version. Then we have again another crew first aid kit, and then again above it you can just see the replicated release catch for the emergency exit. So in theory it was important to keep that area clear so that your emergency hatch could fall away without getting clogged up with half a ton of equipment. Then we've got just moving around, we've got some of the electrical equipment and the petrol filter for the vehicle in the sort of top right hand side. And then there are your slave point socket would be in that corner, and also your auxiliary for your lamp if you're going to use your lamp to perhaps map read or so forth. Then we've got the battery charging unit just down by the side of the battery frame. By the side of the radio frame. And then we have seat-wise, we've got the commander seat. So the commander seat, you've got a little handle on the side which is telescopic, so effectively you can pull it down and then it'll fly up. But again, notoriously, when you're trundling along, if you sat on that seat, the thing would just collapse by its own accord. So it's you'd be better off just leaving it down and standing on top of the seat rather than actually risking sitting on this concertinaed commander seat. Directly below there, so if you were doing some servicing as a driver, you would slide the seat off, and then below the seat you've got a folding plate that a lug would undo, and that would give you access to your gearbox and your transfer box oil levels. So a couple of dipsticks in there. Famously though, so if you talk to any Ferret crews, people shudder when you mention a thing called the fluid flywheel. So right on the back, just below the petrol tank, we have a flywheel, which periodically you had to check to make sure there was plenty of oil in it. But to extract the nut, there was a risk that if you dropped the fluid flywheel nut, that it would go down into the engine area, and obviously if you restarted it up, it would clagger around, and you'd end up having to sort of lift the engine to recover the nut. So there was a special tool in which you would recover that nut from the fluid flywheel, and then to get it into the position of extracting the nut and checking the oil level, you would use the starting handle to turn the engine and then you'd have basically one person would be looking at the flywheel position for the nut, and then someone at the back will be turning the starting handle to get it into the correct position. So when you own a Ferret Scout car in private hands, you'll find that the owners are just absolutely desperate to get a picture of their vehicle in service. So part of the research has been scanning the internet, being in contact with ex-squaddies and just trying to find out whether there are images out there of your vehicle. And that's all going to be denoted by the vehicle registration number. So there are a huge amount of Ferret pictures out there, but the amount of pictures where the registration plate is obscured, it's very, very frustrating. And this vehicle spent, as mentioned, most of its life in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. And so what I've done is I've just been researching lots of sort of early 70s pictures of the units that it was serving with, mainly sort of cavalry and tank units. I was just looking through the internet on YouTube, and I was looking at it was a British Forces Broadcasting Service video, and it was a commemoration of 30 years of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Had a watch of that, and poof, lo and behold, there was a still image of the vehicle in Belfast. So I contacted the television company, so obviously captured that, contacted the television company, and then they were able to get in contact with the person who was being interviewed on the television programme. So I managed to make contact with him. It was absolutely brilliant because he was able to tell me, he was there in sort of 72, 73, I think he served with the Blues and Royals, and he was able to tell me all the places that this vehicle went to, all the different RUC stations and military barracks in and around Belfast, working out of Aldergrove Airport, and they used four ferrets at a time. So when they used to patrol, there were 4 ferrets in tandem that would patrol around Belfast. He mentioned things like being acid attacks, petrol bombs, and being quite frightened inside the ferret. You know, when you're being pelted with stones and rubble and so forth. So that gave me a really good background behind the ferret service. And then, as part of a ferret group on Facebook, someone said, has anybody got one of these registration plates? And someone had obviously been trawling through some BBC archive footage and then discovered this vehicle in a piece of silent video. It only lasts for about 15-20 seconds, but it's this vehicle operated by the Royal Armoured Corps para unit. So they were sort of, there's images of it, of troops sort of leaping in and out on a VCP, on a vehicle checkpoint. So that was really like the holy grail for me. But if there are any more pictures out there, I'll be really fascinated to see any. So part of the process to to fix up the vehicle, I mean, I've replaced so many components and repaired so many components. You know, the list is endless. Part of that process was also to bring the vehicle back to its original bare metal, so I could respray it. And for me, that was fascinating because it was a bit like an archaeological dig where I could sort of see what was underneath the layers and layers of squaddy 4-inch brush paint. So if I go for the turret as an example, in Northern Ireland, this vehicle used to have a wire cutter. So it would have been a piece of angle iron protruding from the front of the turret to protect the commander from any wire that was strung across the road, to prevent the commander being decapitated. That there was a protected piece of angle iron. So you can see the sort of the marks, and the repair and the weld marks that have been applied and recovered. So further around the vehicle as well, going back to bare metal again, we've got this series, and it's showed up nicely actually with the sort of the marks on here, and these are actually it's a hazard of the RAF being just down the road. I'm not complaining though. So another area on the side of the vehicle, once I'd removed the paint, you get these little lines on here. And there's been lots of debate over the years on sort of ferret groups, but these are hardening marks. So when the piece of plate was manufactured in the factory, in the foundry, They want to make sure that that it's hardened correctly. So effectively, they're checking all the sort of shore hardness with these marks. So some of the features dotted around the Ferret, you'll see these on open sections of plating, usually obscured by layers and layers of paint. Other areas as well, so we can look here and we've got a quality stamp. So when the piece of plate has been inspected, we've got a nice little quality stamp here just to denote that it's been approved. Further around the back of the vehicle, when we were sort of stripping the paint back, you've got, it's in its service in Northern Ireland, we've got these, there would have been 2 brackets just positioned on the rear. And effectively those brackets would hold a great big coil of barbed wire. And that barbed wire would be for if you had a snap VCP or you needed to cut it across a road, you had it to hand. Part of the crew kit as well would be gloves. You'd have a pair of leather gloves with metal studs in that you'd be able to sort of handle the barbed wire. So another feature of the Ferret is once they'd left barracks in Northern Ireland, and you'd had the risks of a would-be rioter climbing onto the vehicle, so extremely dangerous. So they decided to take a coil out of it's a tank coil out of a Centurion tank, and that was fitted to the inside of the vehicle, and then it was connected through a grounding wire. So you've actually got a piece of chain hanging down here on the vehicle, and then a would-be rioter climbing on the vehicle, because the crew are grounded with the rubber tyres, they could flick a switch which would activate the coil and then electrocute any would-be rioter climbing on the vehicle. So it was a useful bit of kit. I've heard a story as well, is that before the vehicles went out, they used to douse them with water, so give them a good spray over. So that would just intensify the kick that the would-be rioter would get when they tried to climb on the vehicle. Looking after a Ferret Scout car is just ongoing, it's never ending. So there are always issues with Ferrets, and as I said in a previous clip, is that you'll probably always see a little bit of oil underneath certainly the inner bevel boxes, because they do leak, so there's the odd drip of oil that comes out of them. But it's very, very important that you're sort of continuously looking at all the oils, all the lubricants, and topping them up. So the things that we'd be doing is making sure that, so for example, the inner bevel boxes, so they would be topped up with oil. So religiously every year, I would drain all the oils out of them, all the old oil, re-top up. And then we've got the outers as well. So the outer hubs would also drain and refill all the oils. There are also a gazillion grease nipples on the thing as well. So you need a decent grease gun to go around and make sure that everything is sort of lubricated. So just moving around to the sort of the rear of the vehicle. So engine-wise, still a bit hot actually, but engine-wise, things that you need to be looking out for. Obviously, religiously every year, I'm sort of taking the plugs out, gapping them, making sure the belts are all in good nick. We've got an oil filter housing here as well, so annually I'd take the filter out. If it's not in too bad nick, I would sort of clean it and refit it, but certainly every couple of years that's being replaced. Timing and generally on the engine side, it's absolutely brilliant. It's very little can go wrong with a Rolls-Royce B60. So on this side, some of the things that we'll be looking at and things that can go wrong, we've got the carburetor. So the carburetor, and I should think other Ferret owners will have experienced the same problem, is they tend to need a rebuild every now and then, and they've got rubber components in there that the dreaded E10 fuel manages to eat away. So some Ferret owners have actually bypassed the fuel pump, which is all the way down here. So there's some rubber components in there, and they tend to get eaten away with the sort of modern day fuel. So I do put some additive in there as well, just to try and protect that. But some Ferret owners have actually bypassed the system and put a sort of an electric pump on there. I'm not personally so keen on that, because I don't want a pump whirring away when, if anything went wrong, I want it to stop. But also I like the originality of of having the original fuel pump on there. And when you change it, you have to be a bit of a contortionist. Battery wise as well, so to change the batteries or to check them over, you're often sort of taking a lot of the tin work out and taking the oil cleaner out and getting access to those parts. The good thing about this vehicle as well is that if I lower this down, you can lock off the lids here, and then you've got a couple of bolts that you can undo, and then you can lift off the entire back plate so you can get access to the engine. Something that we did last year, we built all 4 wheel stations, so they're completely rebuilt. We put new gear carriers in, and so they were sort of completely refurbished because they obviously hadn't been done since service. And then I've replaced the radiator. That was a couple of years ago. So to get to the radiator, you're literally undoing all the armour and pulling the whole of the back end off to get access to it. So it's I have a friend, Barry Dady, so he comes over and helps me out with it. He's ex-Remy, which is absolutely golden. So he spent time in the 60s and 60s on Ferret, so he's been a wealth of knowledge for me. So it's to do it yourself is quite challenging, so it's always good to have someone that can help you out. But it can be hours and hours of fun. It certainly pulls you away from the television, and there's never any time to get bored, and there's always a job to do.